When I want to get started, I can just go. I'm already on. If we're really quiet, we can listen to this talk right here. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah. Thank you so much for coming to my talk. This is a fabulous conference in your fabulous city. I had the best breakfast buffet this morning. It's my favorite thing about coming here is the breakfast buffet. Is that bad? I think that's a good thing. It's a compliment. I like to find out a little bit about my audience and what your experience is. So could you raise your hand if you've ever used Node before? Okay. Can you raise your hand if you are traditionally a client-side JavaScript developer? Okay, that was most everyone. Okay, and what about server-side developers? Okay, a lot of people are both, it looks like, which is good. All right, so I'm going to start this talk by telling you, I don't use PowerPoint, a little about me. So my name is Sarah. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and where I was coming from so you can kind of gauge the level of difficulty. I have been building software for it's actually 11 years now. I figured that yesterday. In America, it is impolite to ask how old that makes me, so I'm not going to tell you, so don't ask. Seriously. Okay, so when I first started out as a developer, I did data warehousing in MS SQL for a few years. So I did a lot of Visual Basic and T-SQL and things like that. That was the level of coding I was doing. And then I did the next 4 years doing ASP.NET and C#. I really enjoyed ASP.NET, their MVC framework, and I did that for a while. And then I found JavaScript. So in ASP.NET, they give you packages that you can work with, and you kind of use their built-in libraries. And when I started looking into those libraries, I found JavaScript. And there are two, in the past 10, 12 years, there have been two big advancements in JavaScript. They're like the biggest ones, I think. Well, three now that there's Node. The first one was Firebug. I don't know if you remember doing JavaScript before Firebug existed, but it was awful. It was terrible. There wasn't any debugging. You were doing everything with logging in the console, and that was not great. Or alerts. You did like 1 million alerts. And then after that was jQuery, and jQuery just made JavaScript a lot easier. So at that point, both jQuery and Firebug existed. So I really enjoyed developing in JavaScript. And since then, I've focused on the client side, building frameworks for clients for their companies and object-oriented JavaScript. I've also played in Python and Ruby enough to be bad at it. So I think talking about software can be really boring when you're just talking about syntax. So I decided to try something a little different today. Today, we're going to be examining a personal failure of mine while building software. Has anyone read the book Peopleware? There's this fabulous book that you should absolutely read. It's called Peopleware. I didn't see any hands. And it's basically about how in software, when there's failure, it's usually not the technology. Because there's just awesome stuff out there. Usually when software fails, or a software company fails, it's the people, or it's the mistakes they made. And one thing that we don't talk about enough are times that we've tried and done things and failed at it. And I think it's important to discuss it with each other. You never see it. If you're ever in New York, I live in New York, there's something called a New York Tech Meetup. And if you ever want to feel wonderful about being a developer, or a nerd, or anything, whatever you consider yourself, it is awesome. Once a month, we have like basically like an amphitheater now. It's the first Tuesday of every month. It's also aired online, and it sells out. They open up like tickets in groups over the month, and it's impossible to get tickets. They sell 900 tickets, and they sell out right away. And all the New York Tech Meetup is people that are working on cool shit and want to show it to you. So basically, they do 5-minute demos where people just go up and be like, this is what I'm working on. I like it. The audience asks us questions, and that's it. And it's 2 hours long. And it is awesome. And you go around and you sit there and you look around and you're like, wow, I am not alone. There are 900 other people that think this is cool. So it's super fun. But anyway, they had like a series on failure, or like a test series on failure. And there's this guy came up and he was like, yeah, I had this startup. And he was talking about, like, it was a really intimate failure of his. Like, I was like, wow, this person's really opening up. That is awesome. I'm so glad that, like, we're finally discussing this. He's like, yeah, and then, I was laying off employees, and that was going to be it. We got into the tubes, and this is what I learned. And then I decided to start doing something different, and then we were Groupon. And I was like, that's not a failure. Like, Groupon's kind of a big deal. I've heard of that before. So anyway, I think it's important to talk about this stuff, and hopefully we can all learn. I've definitely learned. So I'm not going to do the conclusions for you. I'll let you come to them. There are things we should discuss, though, that are not in the story. Throughout, we're going to talk about Node. We're going to talk about what I learned going from client to server-side JavaScript, just the things that you have to do that you maybe haven't done before. But here I'm going to cover some things that don't work into the theme work of the story. So why do you use Node instead of client-side JavaScript? It's a good question, because client-side JavaScript is awesome, especially with things like Backbone and great libraries that we can use. So security is a big one. If you want to do authentication and stuff like that, you probably shouldn't do it in the client side. It just doesn't really make any sense. So security, it lives on the server. It's a lot more secure. Concurrency, people doing a lot of things at the same time, and you can manage that using Node. That's one of the more fabulous things about it. It's also as cool as shit. So some other things we should know that aren't in the story. Node Package Manager, it's called NPM. It's a way you install packages that you're going to work with in Node. It's kind of like Gems if you do Rails or Ruby. It's basically like Homebrew, where you're just like brew install or gem install, that kind of thing. So you can actually, I think you can homebrew NPM. If you want to learn anything about this, there's a ton of libraries. I'm going to go over a lot of the libraries in this talk, but there's lists of them. If you go Joyent, they're the ones building out Node.js. They have a GitHub account with hundreds, I'm guessing hundreds, it looks like at least 100 different libraries, and the differences between them for the different tasks you need them for. So if you want to go check out some libraries or learn more about, I'm not going over all of them, obviously, but if you want to learn more, check out their GitHub. Okay, so the beginning of the story, it starts like this. Do you guys do hackathons here? Hackathons in You guys have to do hackathons. Hackathons are amazing. So do you really not do hackathons here? You have to do hackathons here. You do? Okay. So hackathons can be like 24 hours or 48 hours, where a bunch of people get together in the same place, and it's usually a contest, right? There's usually a cool prize. For Photo Hack Day, there's like a $10,000 first prize, which is like 5 kroner. I've been making that joke for like the past 5 days. And also, so you got to be on the NASDAQ screen. So your app that you built, if you win, is on the NASDAQ screen in Times Square, which is like huge. Which is, I wonder how that went really. Like, what's interesting about that to people watching the NASDAQ screen? And there's all kinds of prizes. There's sweet headphones there, and people sponsor food. And basically, you stay there for 48 hours, and it's gross because you've been coding for 48 hours. The room of other coders also coding for 48 hours. But it's awesome, and it's really rewarding. So in the end, everyone demos. There's like a panel of judges. They ask you questions, and somebody wins. So this is Photo Hack Day 2 that happened this year. For Photo Hack Day 1, my team got the People's Choice Awards, which is basically like winning. We won these sweet JetBlue gift cards for our application called Stash Your Stash. It was, you know how there's all these things that put mustaches on people? Well, it was the opposite. We used the face.com API to isolate points on people's faces that had mustaches and replace the mustache area with their skin So it took mustaches off of people. So that was awesome. So we were coming back and photo hack day 2, and we were going to bring it. I was thinking about this for like months beforehand. I knew what we were going to work on. Like I'd been planning this, dreaming for this. It was really exciting. So, so my idea was, so I love Octocats. Do you guys like Octocats? I obviously love Octocats. I think they're so cute. They're the GitHub mascot, right? And I think they're adorable. And people make different kinds of Octocats. There's like a whole page dedicated to different art surrounding Octocats. I love them. And the face.com API is really awesome. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. Basically, you upload a picture to them, and they will return back to you a lot of information. They will give you gender of the person in the photo. You have to do like profile. So like gender of the person based on percentage, if they're wearing glasses, kind of facial hair they have, just like all kinds of data, where their eyes start and end. But it's a really, really awesome and powerful. I think Facebook just bought them this week, actually. Was it Facebook? Somebody bought them. Google? Someone bought them this week. Right? So why not give people their own Octocat, right? So people take their picture, they upload it to the site, and an Octocat that looks like them is dynamically generated and sent back to them. Like that is hands down going to win the hack day. No one's going to think of anything cooler than that. So that's what we were going to do. So 2 months beforehand, I started recruiting my team. I was talking to people about this. I was like, listen, we've got to get the team together. We're all going to go. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to break things down. This is what we're going to work on. This is a secret to winning a hackathon, which happens to our teams because I run an organization called Girl Develop It. And we do low-cost software development classes geared towards women. That's my elevator pitch. So the one thing is the majority of our students are designers coming to learn to be developers, and they are absolutely our secret weapon at hackathons because our hacks, like everyone else's hacks, always look like garbage, but they're cool. But ours are cool and they look really good. So it's like we're going to get a whole bunch of client-side people together to make this look amazing. And then I should probably get another person working on the server side so I don't stress myself out. Because when we did Stash Your Stash, I was the only server side person. I was up for like 48 hours in a row. I was exhausted and, like a zombie. So I was like, I should get at least one other person so that I'm not doing this all by myself. And we should probably get an illustrator as well because we're going to be making these Octocats. So we have to figure out a way to make features for the new Octocat. So that was that. And then beforehand, so before a hackathon, you're allowed to do all the research you want. You just can't start coding. So I was in charge of the research. And the game plan was to get the attributes that I could from the face.com API. They return to you most of what you need, but not everything. And then dynamically, so if you layer SVG files on top of each other, you can make a composite image. So that was my game plan. I was going to get different features, I was going to get SVGs, and I was going to layer them on top of each other to make an awesome Octocat. And then, of course, the profit thing. It's default for the internet. Okay. So it's the day of the hackathon. I'm going to actually take a sip of my water that I've been holding. So we sat down and we were. I put everyone in 3 teams. There was like 7 or 8 of us. There was an illustrator. Her name was Tina. She was awesome. Actually, there was like 5 or 6 of us. We lost people. With design and templating, Pamela and Tony, and then back-end implication, just going to be me. We lost 3 people of our team right away. When they heard what we were working on, they were like, we're probably going to do something smaller. I'm trying to remember what they did, actually. It was interesting. I forget. But we'll learn more about them on the other side. So I got on there, and I was definitely project managing. I was like, all right, Tina, you go sit over there. You're going to work on illustrations. Client-side people, you get to designing. And me, I'm going to start on the server side. Because I did not find that other person to help me with the server-side stuff going on. So the client-side team as well, they were not they HTML, CSS design. That's all that they were working on. So Node uses templating. I decided that I was going to do this in Node. For reference purposes, this is my second Node application. I had done an e-commerce Node application for a client. So I was not 100% comfortable, but I at least knew a little bit about what I was doing. So Node has templating engines like Rails does. And Jade templates are probably the most popular ones. They look a lot like Haml. We're going to compare them in a second. So I've worked with Jade templates. That makes it easier to display data. They haven't done that. But the cost of them to learn how to use Jade rather than me doing data in HTML and CSS was, I was like, all right, you guys, here's a tutorial. You're going to sit down. We're going to do HTML, CSS first. I'm going to show you how to change it to Jade. And then we're going to be golden. So just to compare a couple different templating engines, Jade is a super popular one. It's pretty good looking. It's white space sensitive. Personally, I don't like things that are white space sensitive, but a lot of people do. It's not awful. When I looked at the joint list of templating engines, Jade and Haml.js are made by the same team or person. I think it's a team. And that this was literally what it said. Jade is like Haml, but easier to read. So that infers that Haml is just like Haml, but less easier to read than Jade. So you can decide what that means. Mustache.js, I don't use anything with mustaches, so you guys are going to figure that out. And JS HTML is also a popular one, and that is a Razor View engine for Node. Also, you have a lot of hosting options, really easy ones too, when it comes to working with Node. Nodejitsu, they have a fun IRC chat. That's a bonus. They're free, which is also a huge bonus for now. I think they have an open beta now, so before you had to get a beta invite, I think now anyone can work with Nodejitsu. It's super simple, just like, does anyone use Heroku? Yeah, it's basically Heroku, the same type of thing with commands, which brings us to Heroku. They do Node hosting as well. They are bigger, and sometimes that is a lot better because it means they're probably going to be around for a while, and they care about their documentation, and they have the people to support you. So Heroku is probably more dependable. You can set up your own servers, which gives you more control. It makes you cooler if you do that, and you're not just doing a deploy, kind of. It means you have more spare time. But it does give you more control over your server. Obviously, you're up to the defaults. There's Windows. Just kidding. So has anyone done Node hosting on Windows? So I haven't talked to anyone that has. But apparently there is Node hosting for Windows. I wouldn't go in that direction because, but that is up to you. I'm sure you're so encouraged to do it now. Okay, so routing. So if you don't do server-side development, routing is telling your application what page to serve up. So, and what it's kind of in the controller. So you need a routing engine in Node. Well, you don't have to have it. Here are your options for routing in Node. Express, it's what everyone uses. Express is a multi-layer. They do have a lot of libraries. They do routing and authentication, and they do a lot of stuff. So Express is super easy to add. It's just npm install Express. Node also has baked-in routing that you can use for simple routing. Just to use the URL library that's included. You can do url.parse. Flatiron, I haven't used it. I've heard really good things about it. And they say it is simple, decoupled, and unobtrusive, which sounds wonderful. But that's what they say. It was on their site. So you you see what you hear. So, so one detail that's important to the story is that we started at 12 noon, right? So the whole team got together at 12 noon on Saturday. Demos were 11:30 a.m. on Sunday. Okay, so at 7 p.m., our illustrations are done. Here's one of our illustrations. How cute is that Octocat? So cute. They're beautiful. And so at that point, while I was working on the stuff like the rowdy and things like that, I had Tina, our illustrator, turn them into SVGs, turn all of the features into SVGs so we could have those for layers. And then I moved on to the database. And I heard ODM for the first time last week. Have you heard ODM? So I'm used to saying ORM, and I was even used to saying like ORM when it came to Mongo and things like that. And someone said ODM last week, and I was like, ODM. Oh, I guess because they're not relational. That makes sense, right? But then I heard that for the first time. So Node allows you to use really any database that you want. I usually use Mongo because it's so easy. And they have an official driver for Mongo, which I like better. Before, there was just something called Mongoose, and the image mapping for Mongoose was a little kludgy when it came to like lazy loading and child objects and stuff. So I like when Mongo came out with their official ODM, that I went with that one's pretty great. But you can literally use anything, Postgres, MySQL, MS SQL, all that stuff. So that's pretty great. And they have, so if you go on the Joyent site, they have the drivers for these right there, and most of them are the official drivers made by the people making the database, that's always good. Okay, so I was also making my objects and entities. I wanted to put one of them up here so you can see kind of what it looked like. Here I'm using Mongoose. This is before the official Mongo mapper came out. But this is very familiar JavaScript, right? So I'm making a new object called cat schema, and it has a lot of values in it. Everything is a string. I don't know if you noticed that. But there's no ID or anything because Mongoose takes care of that for you. It makes Mongo takes care of that for you. It gives unique IDs to all of your objects. But this was kind of the idea I had going, right? So there would be a cat, and cat would have different features. It would have glasses, and glasses yes or no. It might have hair. It would need a hair color, right? And eyes, and eye color, and mouth. This is what the cat was going to look like. So based on what you look like, it was important for me to get things like skin color and stuff like that. But for now, I was just going to work from here. And this is where we got started. So here, so I don't know, here's another thing we should learn about, modules. So you can write, the libraries that people are writing, you can do the same. And it means that you're just building a module in Node, and you can reference the module you've built using the exports keyword. So, right here, I'm using the exports keyword to do some routing for a page called new under in a folder called photos. So this is when I'm generating a new photo. This is what I do, and photo is another object. So I just wanted to give you guys an idea as to the syntax. There may be time for coding today, so we might see some stuff. But exports means I'm calling a module from outside my file that I'm currently working in. And then we do, so I was also working on authentication. This is where things started to get a little, started to go a little wrong, right? So I decided that I wanted to do authentication, and what kind of authentication would we do? Obviously, people would not be allowed in the site unless they could authenticate with the GitHub. And this is actually a battle, right, with our team. Because they were like, well, people should be able to get an Octocat even if they don't have a GitHub. I was like, no way. We need to make it so people that have GitHubs get an Octocat, and then we can find out what their primary languages, and then we can have images that go with their languages. So it's like, Tina, work on Pythons, get a Ruby. We'll find out what people are working on most, and then we'll add that to their AutoCAD, right? So you can get a really personalized AutoCAD. So I use something called EveryAuth, which is exactly like it sounds. You can authenticate with anything. It's baked in, so it's, you know, Facebook, Google, GitHub, LinkedIn, all of the things. It's all baked in, and they make it really easy. So I definitely endorse EveryAuth. Connect is something that's baked into Express. They also do authentication. Most most of your routing packages and most packages that are there to just assist you in using Node have authentication. Okay, so now we're at 12 a.m. And our designs are done and they're ready to be implemented. And they were super good looking. How cute is that? Also, I bought octocat.me. That was our URL. How great is that, right? And this is what it looks like. This is our little AutoCAD, and it has a machine, and it's really awesome looking. So I was super excited at this point. I was like, yes, we're so winning this thing. And so it was time for the people working on the design to get going with turning the designs into Jade templates. So that's what I had. So I had the design team working on. We were 4 people. I like how there were teams. So this is just what a Jade template looks like. And like you can see, it's white space sensitive. It's pretty familiar to those of you used to templating engines. You can add properties in paren and different things like that and do nesting with tabs. So it's pretty... the good thing about the templating engines is accessing data. You can pass objects into the engine, and then it's as simple as doing, you know, your object name dot property whenever you want to reference it. So, so that's what I appreciate about the templating engines. Otherwise, you can use traditional HTML, CSS, and pass in the data through like JSON, and then populate it in client-side JavaScript. So at this point, I'm working on the photo upload, and also getting data back from the face.com API. So here we have my API keys. Don't write these down. And I was also using, do you know showoff.io? Have you ever seen showoff.io? It's actually a pretty neat tool. You can do this yourself, but they make this really easy for opening up your local host to use as a remote server. So in order to develop locally, I was using showoff to host my image. That's a cool tool for any of you who do web development. I think it's like $1 to use it for a day and $5 to use it for a month. So that's a great price point. I was making the API call to face.com, and it returns back great information like the gender and the mood of the person. I tried to work that as well. I had like a smile and like a frown and all this stuff. It gives you whether they're wearing glasses, but not all the information I wanted, right? So like the gender and whether or not someone is wearing glasses is the only thing that's very effectual for our AutoCADs, and that's not enough. I didn't think that was enough to know about people in general. So so I had the photo upline done, and we have the designs done, we have the illustrations done. People are working on the Jade templates. I've got the photo uploading. The authentication done, and looking back at this, I'm like, wow, I did a lot in a really short period of time, right? Like it was like 12 hours. So we had the photo upload, the authentication, returning data from face.com, right? So at least halfway there. So we have hosting ready, routing is done, the database is set up, authentication is working, the API is being called, and The views are being implemented by people that are learning how to use view engines as we speak. They did an amazing job. What I wanted to do next was get skin and hair color, right? Because if I could get skin and hair color, that would be amazing. And then we could put hair on people. And then I was going to do length of hair because gender is not a Boolean. It's returned to you as a percentage value. So I was like, if people have a higher female percentage, I'm going to give them longer hair. That's a weird gender indication, but I thought I would work with it. So getting the color of an individual pixel, which is what I planned on doing because the face.com API, some of the tags they give you is like the location of the eyes and the location of the quarter of the mouth. So I was like, okay, I'll just go in the middle of those two things. I'll grab that pixel. I'll grab the color. You know, the chance of error is pretty wide because like there's something in the way of my face. I'm going to get that color, but at least we'll be close enough, right, to get the color of people's faces. So I looked into all of this, and this took quite a few hours. There's a couple node libraries. When I was putting this talk together, I found a whole bunch more. Like the community is growing like crazy. I was like, wow, I wish I had seen this then. But the graphics magic was one I played with for a while. There's a lot of dependencies that I had to install, and I was just sitting there doing like npm blank, npm, just like, it would be like, you're lacking this. Okay, install. And then that didn't work out, so I went to something called Nodebox. And then something you can do is if you make an HTML5 canvas, you can pass it a pixel and you can get the color of it. At that point, when I started to do that, it was 3 a.m. I was exhausted, and I did not get far with that at all. So I finally got to the point where I'm tired, I'm not getting skin and hair color, this is it. And at 4 a.m., this is the #1 image when I searched for Panic. This is the band Panic at the Disco. I don't know if anyone would recognize them. Maybe I'm glad that no one did. So at 4 a.m., I was in full-scale panic. I looked at the team, and I was like, just so you know, this is not going to get done. We should just quit right now. This is not getting finished. I know, because right now I have 6 hours to do all the stuff that's left, and it's not possible. And of course, they looked at me, and they're like, no, you're great. Come on, you can so do this. We're great. We're most of the way there. We've been working for so long. Let's get this together. You know, Sarah, it's going to be fine. I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like, this cannot be physically done by humans. And they were like, no, totally. We were so close. We're almost there, blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right, you guys, I'm going to keep trying. So the next challenge that I ran into is the fact that I need to store color and superimpose these SVG files on top of each other. 3 things I have not done before. So, you know, I'd gone into this like there are some big holes. And, you know, we'll do reflection at the end of the story, but going into this, there were some big holes in where I didn't know what I was going to do. I just figured there was a way to do it. So this is another case of this. So I didn't know how to do this. I hadn't done this before, but I was going to figure it out, and it was going to be fine. So there's a couple. There's something called SVG edit that works with Node, doing image editing. D3 is another one. There's something called Raphael. I don't know if you've heard of Raphael before, but it's a client side, and you can use the server side as well, image manipulation library for SVG files. So that was something that was good. Something I ran into was the fact that SVG files are really big. So like at first I was trying to store the text of the SVG file in JavaScript objects and calling them. But that was messy, right? Because if you like accidentally hit a key, the whole thing was screwed up. And you couldn't really figure out where. So then I was like, all right, well, I'll store them in Mongo then. I'll throw them in the database, right? Because then you can't really mess with them. You can just call them, and you're not going to really overwrite them. But then I figured someone had to sit there. Either someone had to sit there and do insert statements, right? Which I'm the only person that knows how to do that. So that's not going to happen. We don't have time for that. Or I have to build an admin screen for someone else to enter in the SVG file text. So I went down that path for a little while. And and that didn't work out. I was also going to scrape the data from inside the SVG file and return it that way. But that was also difficult because, for a couple different reasons, mostly because of the HTML encoding. That's what I ran into an issue with. So at this point, and then I was thinking about storing it just in a page in Node and doing it that way, and that went for a while. And then we reached the 11 a.m. point where we were at a full scale. It's the worst thing, right? Because the rest of the team totally pulled their weight and they worked hard, right? They were up all night doing these Jade templates, something they'd never done before. I felt like being in a battle, I felt like a general in battle where like half your army dies and you're like, sorry guys, I'm super bummed. I don't think any general sounds that way. I don't think that's ever happened. But you're like, you look at your team and they're like half asleep and they've been working so hard and they want you to get it done so bad because they worked so hard making something wonderful and you just don't have it. Like it's not there. And we got to a point where we were just trying to return something on a boot. Like I was like, okay, because hackathons, usually the demos for hackathons are pretty kludgy. I mean, I was really disappointed because I wanted this amazing application where people were like, oh my goodness, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. But usually hackathons are thrown together, and if people have only something half done, it's fine. So at the last minute, I was like, all right, I'm going to do it just so it gives me a gender. We'll have 2 cats. Well, one will be the boy cat, one will be the girl cat. It's enough for proof of concept. We'll put it in there. And I was so tired, and I had nothing left in me, and I couldn't get that to work. And so at 11:30, when the demo was, I just quit. I quit. And the saddest part of all of it was my team went and watched the demos. So they were just sitting there after having worked all night, and they didn't get it done. They were great, and they were awesome to work with. And I've worked with them at hackathons since, so they don't hate me. But I think it was a really good learning experience because and I'll let you extrapolate from it what you want. I think the biggest thing I learned was to not have more than one undefined when you have a limited period of time. Right? So my rule now is if I'm learning something new, I only learn one thing that's new. Right, and the rest of the thing, unless I have an unlimited amount of time, the rest of the time I go with something that's familiar. So rather than doing a Node application with SVG manipulation and layering and all these things in a weekend, possibly either finding someone that had done that before would have been good, or doing more research into actually playing with SVG manipulation before the weekend. Getting something that worked. Maybe it's not that, so it's not cheating. But knowing what I'm doing while I was going in the weekend, it was a big thing. So I think that was super important. But while we're here, so that's the end of the story. While we're here, I forgot to turn off all the things. We're going to get Skype messages and everything. So while we're here, I figured we could take a look at Octocat. I have to plug in as well. It's not looking good. There's a GitHub repository if anyone feels like looking at it and working on it. But I figured we could take a look at the code base. Also, I'm going to turn, there we go. Sorry. Okay. So this is what our solution looks like. And to go over some of the folders that we're looking at, and we're going to look at some of the important files that you have when you're doing a Node application. So this is my server .js. I do a lot of my config settings in here. I can do my routing in here as well if I have simple routing. a lot of this code was written while in a partially comatose state, so I apologize if there's anything weird. I tried to do my best, though. That's my every auth stuff. I'm not going to go line by line, but a lot of the config settings for your application you're going to have in your server.js file. So things like my view engine is Jade. Where to look for my image files, what kind of, so we're using CSS less, which is a lovely thing, and Node allows you to use it easily. You know, where to look for my views, different things like that. So these are a lot of the settings that that you have in your application. So that's an important file to have. Another super important file is your package.json. This is basically your manifest file. It tells the server what packages you are using. So in this case, you can see. Can you see in the back? Okay, good. So in this case, you can see I'm using Express and Jade and Mongoose, and I install them locally using. So once I have this file, which happens when when I'm using a package, I do an npm install. So I do npm install package name. And the package name and the version number automatically gets put in my package.json file. And then on the server, when I just do npm install, it installs these packages. So that makes things super, super simple. I have my models. There's a lot of models in here. I went a lot of different directions there. And my routes. And my routes, just to kind of take a look, you've seen some of this. It's my controllers, I'm sending certain information out to my views. So then we can look in my views folder. And that's where, so this is a photo upload page. So you can see Jade is pretty simple. It's just white space sensitive with nesting. We already took a look at this before a little bit. But it makes it relatively easy to do HTML templating. And then I have my public folder, which is where I keep all my assets. So public is where I have my client-side JavaScript, my images, my style sheets, and stuff like that. So let's take a look. I'm going to start up show 3. So that will, this is showoff.io. It's just going to open up my my ports. Oh, how is that possible? Yes. Okay. And then in order to start my local server, I just do node server. I must have changed something. Hold on. Okay, what file is it telling me? Module. That's unfortunate. Let's do an npm update. Oh, that's update. Sorry, I promise this was just working before. I must have changed something. That's a bummer. Well, I think I can go to, I have that solution online as well, so let's try that. So it should be, okay. So this is where it's running online. So I have a little Ochat.me guy. I can sign in with GitHub. I haven't tested this remotely. I'm sorry. All right, so we're going to have to debug this issue. Cannot read dependent. So I must have done something in package.json. Am I in the right folder? Oh, you know what it is? I'm not in the right folder. There we go. Poof. That was a scary one. I thought we were going to be debugging for the next 15 minutes, which is a super fun talk. All right. Okay. So now I have my GitHub auth. And the worst part about it is I worked on the GitHub auth for so long. It really doesn't give me anything but locking out people that don't have a GitHub. So that wasn't very valuable. So you just go in and you upload your own headshot. I have this fabulous one that doesn't look like me anymore. It's different hair. And then I hit create. And then nothing happens, which is what we're going to work on right now, because this is how far I got, right? So let's take a look at, I should plug in, because there's 15 minutes left, and I have 13 minutes of battery. This is one of those things that's going to change quickly. Sorry. Something you want to do first. All right, great. Okay, so this is a photos file, and I'm going to open up that view now. So views, photos, show is the page that we're looking at. So I can tell that by going here, and it's photos, and photos, the default is show. If I go to my routing, which we should take a look at. Photos, routes. Edit show. So it'll take, then show is not it, it's the index, my apologies. So if you go look at my, it's a good thing I did that. So if you look at my routes and you go to the index, that'll be my default. The index is my default page, so that's why it's not photos index. And that's set up in my server.js. So I'm going into photos.index. That may actually be false. My apologies. The whole server thing kind of got me flustered. So let me collect myself for a second. We're gonna find this out super easily. Okay. So now I'm gonna refresh the page. Okay, good. So that must be set up in my server.js. So it's rendering me photo. Take that alert out. It's sending me to the show.jade, which right now I don't really have anything in there. I have a body and all my HTML stuff, but nothing that I can reference. If you look under image, you'll see photo.path is something is being passed, and that's Jade doing its rendering of an object that's being passed to the page. So photo is an object being passed to the page, and right now, if I go look at that page, so that image ID is photo hidden. Is this. So right now, the photo that's being sent in is the photo that I uploaded, which is a photo. But let's see if we can, based on gender, pass in one of the cats, right? So we're going to take a baby step rather than doing the whole thing with the SVG layering and all those things. We're going to take a baby step, and we're going to pass in one of the cats based on the gender of what the photo, the face.com API tells me. So we have 11 minutes, and we're going to do it. Wasn't the lesson that I overcommitted myself? Okay, so I'm going to my routes for photos. And here, here's where photos.show came in. So here's my route. We've taken a look at this before. the face.com API is sending back data and information. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make photo. So just as a baby step, I'm going to do photo dot, and then what was the value? I'm just going to take a look back. For the photo, it was photo dot path. So I'm going to make photo dot path a photo that we have locally. So have to look in the images folder. So I'm going to grab two photos. I have a boy cat here. This is a friendly looking boy cat. Is that popcorn? No, I think that's beer. None of these gender generalizations are applicable. Okay, so I'm going to grab these two photos, and I'm going to go to my backend folder, and I'm going to go into my public folder and images. I'm going to put them in there. So now I have my two pictures. And as you can see, when I upload an image, it's also getting thrown in here as well. You can see that 947, that image was uploaded to this folder. So I have girl.png and boy, what kind of file is this? Let's give it a well, that's not. Okay. All right. So for now, I'm just going to do, should be able to do images, boy.png. For now, I'm just going to make it a boy regardless. So and then photo saves. And then I'm going to go over to my photos, and I'm going to go into the show. And then I'm going to take out the style here because it says don't display it. And I'm going to just image photo path, and hopefully that path works out. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to restart my node server. Oh, this is stuff I'm printing out. So as you can see right here, this is all the information that I'm getting back from the face.com API. I'm printing out in my console by doing a console log on the server side. Which is super convenient. It acts just like on the browser side, client side. And it gives me all that awesome information, which is super useful. I really like this API a lot. So it can tell that it's 95% sure that I am a female. Great job. It's 95% sure I'm not wearing glasses. Awesome. It's pretty sure I'm smiling. But this is really good information. And if you have a lot of time, you could build something pretty cool. It gives you the yaw and the pitch of your face, I assume. So where your ear is. So that's cool stuff. Okay. So I have to restart my server because I've changed something in the controller. So that means I should restart my server. And then I'm going to go over to the page, and I'm going to start over from the beginning. Do I have this server running? Okay, so I did something wrong. Okay, sign in with GitHub. Okay, I don't know what happened there. So I'm going to upload a photo. I've got to have another one. That one I've already used. All right, I'm not going to go through my pictures real quick. Okay, so I'm going to upload this picture. Do I have my local server running for show off? Okay. I have to start my... Okay, let's try again. Third time's the charm. So, start from the beginning. Oh no, it doesn't like show off right now. Okay, what can I do? I can do get the local host going, and then I'll just go to the third page. That's how great my, it should be photo. Can I just skip? Nope. No, it won't let me do it with that off. So one thing I can do, nope. Is it going to stop? Strange. All right, let's try it and hope that it works out. That is not. Yeah, all right. So there we have our boy cat that's working by default. We have 4 minutes and an iffy server. Let's see if we can throw an if statement in there based on gender. I don't know if I don't know if I want to risk it. I don't think my server is working. So we have our boy cat showing. So that was step next. And so what's to come with octocat.me? I don't know. I'm still working on it. I'm taking baby steps. I'd really love to put it out there sometime. So hopefully in the next few months, because I think it's a sweet idea. It's just not a sweet idea of something to do in a weekend. So thank you guys. Thank you for coming. Can I answer any questions? All right, no questions. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you for having me in your lovely city. Thanks.